The lights over MetLife Stadium burned brighter than usual that night. Not because it was a playoff game, not because a record was on the line, but because the city of New York was desperate for something to believe in. The crowd, impatient and restless, had grown tired of promises. They'd seen big names come and go, veterans, prospects, so-called saviors, each one leaving behind nothing but disappointment. But this night felt different. Somewhere beneath the noise, a 22-year-old rookie named Jaxson Dart adjusted his chin strap, took a deep breath, and looked up at the towering stands. The cameras weren't really on him yet. They were focused on the established stars. But that was fine. That's how he liked it. Quiet, unannounced, unexpected. Because that's where Dart had lived his whole career, in the blind spot between doubt and destiny. When the season started, nobody in New York was talking about Jaxson Dart. He was supposed to be a developmental guy, a third-string quarterback meant to learn the system, take notes and watch from the sidelines while veterans took the hits. But football has a way of rewriting its own script. Injuries, chaos, and the relentless pressure of a city hungry for hope pushed him from the shadows to the front of the stage faster than anyone planned. And under those brutal New York lights that had humbled legends, Dart's time had come. It started slow. His first few drives were uneventful. Short passes, a couple of incompletions, the usual nerves of a first start. Fans murmured, half interested, half expecting another disappointment. The commentators kept their tone polite, the kind they use when they don't expect much. Let's see what the kid can do. Then came the moment that changed everything. Midway through the second quarter, the offense lined up deep in their own territory, 3rd and long. The opposing defense was stacked, blitz coming hard. The crowd braced for another sack. But Dart didn't blink. The ball snapped, and what happened next looked like instinct. Or maybe something even purer. He rolled out left, dodged a defender by inches and fired across his body. A dart, literally, hitting his receiver in stride for a 60-yard bomb that split the defense in half. The crowd erupted. The commentators' voices cracked mid-sentence. Even the sideline froze, stunned. It wasn't just a good throw. It was a moment, the kind that makes fans sit forward and say, "Wait, who is this kid?" From that instant, the energy inside MetLife flipped. Every snap after that carried weight. Every step Jaxson took was met with an echo of belief. You could feel it. The city that had forgotten how to hope was suddenly remembering. When he threw his second touchdown, a perfectly timed corner pass that kissed the edge of the end zone before his receiver even turned, the crowd roared so loud it drowned out the broadcast mics. The camera zoomed in on his face. No celebration. No chest thumping, just calm. The kind of calm that makes you realize this wasn't luck. This was arrival. By halftime, social media was a war zone. Jaxson Dart is him. Where did this kid come from? Jets finally found their future. Reporters scrambled to rewrite their scripts. ESPN switched graphics mid-broadcast. Twitter, or whatever the platform was called that week, turned into a flood of disbelief and celebration. But for Dart, the noise didn't matter. In the locker room, while his teammates high-fived and shouted, he sat in silence. Helmet off, eyes focused on his wristband, replaying each play in his mind. Not to celebrate, but to improve. That's who he was, a grinder in a world of flash. You see, Jaxson Dart's story didn't begin in New York. It began in a small town where talent didn't mean much unless it was matched by work. At Corner Canyon High in Utah, he wasn't the 5-star kid with scholarships lined up. He was the kid who showed up before sunrise, throwing in the cold, repeating the same motion hundreds of times until his arm burned. His father, a former coach, used to tell him, "Discipline makes the dream affordable." Jaxson lived by that line, and tonight, he was paying the price in full. After college, he transferred schools, fought for starting spots, been doubted, overlooked, and called inconsistent. Scouts labeled him a system quarterback. Analysts said he didn't have elite traits, but what they didn't measure, in what no combine ever could, was his will. And that's exactly what New York was seeing. Now, by the third quarter, the rookie was on fire. He read blitzes like a veteran, moved safeties with his eyes, and hit windows so tight they looked impossible. Each throw carried weight, confidence, defiance. The crowd started chanting his name, something that hadn't happened for a quarterback here in years. "Dart! Dart! Dart!" He led one drive that perfectly captured who he was. Down by 6, fourth quarter, 3 minutes left. Pressure at its peak. The pocket collapsed, chaos everywhere. Most rookies would panic, dump it off, take the sack, play it safe. Not Dart. He stepped up, eyes locked downfield, trusted his instincts, and launched a strike 35 yards into the hands of his tight end, who spun free and sprinted for the go-ahead touchdown. The stadium erupted. You could feel the stands shaking. The city that had booed more quarterbacks than it could count was now roaring for a kid they barely knew a week ago. When the final whistle blew, Jaxson Dart jogged to midfield, head down, calm. No wild celebration, no showmanship. Just a handshake, a quiet smile, and a glance toward the sky. His stat line was electric. 312 yards, 3 touchdowns, 0 turnovers. But numbers didn't tell the story. The feeling did. That night, fans leaving the stadium weren't just talking about the win. They were talking about him. The rookie who looked unbothered by pressure, untouched by fame, unafraid of failure. Reporters crowded him in the tunnel, microphones in his face. One asked, "How does it feel to win your first NFL start and to do it like that, under these lights in this city?" Jaxson paused, smiled faintly, and said, "Feels good. But I've got a lot more to prove. Simple, honest, cold." By morning, every sports show in America was leading with the same segment. Is Jaxson Dart the future of the Jets? Debate panels argued. Former players compared him to legends. Analysts broke down his mechanics frame by frame. The noise around him became deafening. But Dart didn't listen. He woke up before sunrise the next day and drove to the team facility, alone, still wearing the same hoodie from the night before. Reporters who spotted him asked why he was back so early. He just shrugged. Game's over. Next one's not. That's how you knew. This wasn't a one-night miracle. This was a movement, because while everyone else saw a breakout, Jaxson Dart saw the beginning of a standard, one he intended to live up to every single week. And as the headlines burned across social media and his jersey sold out in record time, a quiet truth settled over New York. The city that had eaten quarterbacks for breakfast had finally found one who wasn't afraid to bite back. But behind all the glory, behind the chants and celebrations, something else was brewing. A challenge. A storm. Because in New York, heroes aren't born, they're tested. And Jaxson Dart's biggest test was still waiting just beyond the lights. When you play in New York, you don't just play football. You play expectation. The cheers that lift you one week can drown you the next. And for Jaxson Dart, the rookie who'd turned MetLife into a cathedral of belief, that truth was about to hit hard. It began the very next Sunday. Same lights, same crowd, same city, but a very different energy. The headlines had called him Broadway Dart, the savior in green. Sports shows replayed his debut like a trailer for a new blockbuster. Everyone wanted to believe it wasn't a fluke. Everyone wanted him to be the next Brady, the next Rodgers, the next name etched into New York's tortured quarterback history, and Jaxson wanted to believe it too. But the NFL doesn't care about fairy tales. From the first snap, the storm came. Blitzes he hadn't seen before. Defensive disguises designed specifically for him. Corners pressing tighter, linemen crashing harder. The defense wasn't just trying to stop him. They were trying to expose him. To see if the rookie magic could survive when the pocket collapsed and the noise grew cruel. By halftime, it was clear the kid who'd lit up the city was now fighting for air. Interceptions, misreads. The rhythm that once felt effortless had turned jagged. The same crowd that had chanted his name a week ago now booed when a pass sailed high. The New York media didn't wait for Monday. By the third quarter, analysts were already typing headlines. Dart comes back to earth. Was the hype premature? On the sideline, Jaxson sat with his helmet off, staring at the field as the game slipped away. Cameras zoomed in, hungry for emotion. A grimace, a slam, a sign of frustration. But there was nothing. Just quiet focus. After the loss, reporters swarmed. The locker room felt heavy, the air thick with microphones and half-sympathetic questions. What happened out there? Do you think teams are figuring you out already? Jaxson wiped sweat from his face, voice steady. Bad night. Happens to everyone. I'll learn. I'll be back. It wasn't a quote meant to trend, but it did. Because that's who he was. Not loud, not defensive, just relentlessly grounded. Still, New York doesn't forgive easily. The next week's sports radio was merciless. Another overhyped rookie. He can't handle the pressure. Classic Jets story. 1 week of hope. A season of heartbreak, but inside the facility, something different was happening. Dart didn't sulk. He studied. Every throw, every read, every blitz. He stayed long after coaches left, walking through the empty halls, replaying film in the darkened meeting room. The janitor once said he'd see the kid sitting there at 1 a.m., eyes glued to the screen, whispering plays to himself like prayers. He wasn't chasing perfection. He was chasing peace. Then came the week that would define him, a primetime divisional matchup. National spotlight. Redemption or ridicule, nothing in between. The first half was chaos. Dart got hit hard early. A strip sack. Another interception. The camera caught him limping off the field at one point, jaw clenched, refusing to look at the sideline. The crowd was restless again, chanting for the backup. The same stadium that had crowned him now wanted his throne burned, but something shifted in the third quarter. On the sideline, offensive coordinator Nathaniel Hackett leaned close and said quietly, "You've seen everything they've got. Now show them what you've got." Dart didn't nod, didn't speak. He just stood, strapped his helmet, and walked back onto the field like a man returning to settle a debt. The drive began at their own 10-yard line. 90 yards to go. The season's narrative hanging by a thread. The first pass, a bullet. The second, a deep curl, perfectly placed. Then came the moment. Third down, collapsing pocket, linebacker coming free. Dart sidestepped, eyes still downfield, and hit his receiver mid-stride for 42 yards. The crowd erupted again, cautiously at first, then fully. Drive after drive, he clawed back. One play at a time, one throw at a time. And when he scrambled for a first down on 4th and 2, diving head first, getting up with grass in his face mask and blood on his lip, MetLife exploded. He wasn't just winning them back. He was earning them. By the fourth quarter, the kid who'd been written off an hour earlier had thrown for 2 touchdowns and orchestrated a comeback drive that felt like destiny remembering his name. The final throw, a perfect 25-yard laser into the end zone, sealed it. The stadium lost control. Reporters rushed to the sidelines, players surrounded him, and somewhere in the upper deck, fans who'd booed him earlier now chanted, "Dart! Dart! Dart!" When the game ended, he didn't celebrate wildly. He just looked up, smiled softly, and mouthed, "Thank you." Afterward, when asked what changed in the second half, he said, "Nothing. Just stopped listening to the noise." That line, "stopped listening to the noise," became the headline everywhere. It wasn't just a quote. It was a lesson. Because in New York, every player faces the same storm. Some crumble under it. Some survive it. But only a few learn how to move through it, quietly, steadily, with purpose. And that's what Jaxson Dart did. He didn't silence the critics. He outlasted them. As the season went on, his numbers grew, but more importantly, so did his poise. You could see it in how he commanded the huddle, how veterans leaned in when he spoke, how the locker room energy shifted whenever he walked in. He wasn't chasing the spotlight anymore. It was chasing him. By December, the same media that once questioned him was calling him the heartbeat of the rebuild. Analysts who doubted him were replaying clips of his leadership, his toughness, his refusal to fold. But the real story wasn't written in stats or sound bites. It was written in those unseen moments, the ones without cameras. The rookie who stayed after practice, who texted teammates encouragement at midnight, who walked into every game knowing that in this city, you're only as good as your next snap. When the season ended, New York didn't just have a quarterback. It had a cornerstone. And as Jaxson Dart stood at the podium during the final press conference, reporters asked him how it felt to become the face of the franchise so quickly. He smiled and said, "I'm not the face. I'm the reflection of a city that keeps getting knocked down and still shows up." That line echoed through New York sports radio for days. Because it wasn't just about football anymore. It was about the spirit of a kid who'd walked into chaos and turned it into calm. In a league obsessed with flash, Jaxson Dart had done something rarer. He'd earned respect, not by shouting, not by celebrating, but by surviving. And in New York, survival is greatness. The rookie who once played in silence had learned how to make the whole city listen, without ever raising his voice.